I don't think we really knew they were going to end up here someday. At least I didn't. In fact, it was rather chilling for me to think that I knew this person as president, and now he was stripped off of everything and living with us in Hawaii.
For anti-Marcos forces, developments in the Philippines appeared to bring them one step closer to victory. They say that after 20 years, they are no longer the underdog.
We're not the opposition in Hawaii, but very soon we're going to be representing the establishment, the Philippine establishment, because things are changing so fast.
The revolution led to confusion here in Honolulu as the pictures of Ferdinand and Imelda still hung at the Philippine Consul General. Air travel was disrupted and families huddled around the TV set on edge.
If this were a newspaper picture, the caption might read, Imelda and Ferdinand in happier days. They were here in Hawaii, and it was 1 year before the assassination of Benigno Aquino. During their official visits here, local Filipinos have been bussed into events as a show of support. About 3/4 of island Filipinos have ties to Marcos's home province of Ilocos. There has been absolutely no word from Philippine or American or local officials that Marcos has made contingency plans to come here. But speculation is rampant here that Honolulu would be his first choice as a new home.
Because he will feel at home here, because there's a lot of Ilocanos, a lot of Filipinos here in proportion with the population in the United States.
But then when they were driven out of the palace, Reagan promised them, if they come to Hawaii, they will live in heaven. So when they arrived in Honolulu, Reagan did not do anything. And so Mrs. Marcos, every time we had meetings with Mrs. Marcos, President Reagan was telling us we will live in Honolulu in heaven, but we are living in hell.
When Ferdinand Marcos stepped off the plane at Hickam Air Force Base, he was a man without a country, cast adrift in a hostile world, desperately searching for an outstretched hand after fleeing a country he once ruled with an iron fist.
Marcos fled to Hawaii with his family and friends, landing on Oahu in February of 1986.
Only news people and security personnel waited for Marcos and his party this morning at Hickam Air Force Base. Nothing like the throngs of cheering supporters that have greeted the Filipino leader in his previous visits here. The 89 people traveling in the Marcos party made the trip from Guam in an Air Force C-141 that touched down just after 11 this morning. The official greeting party was small. Governor and Mrs. Ariyoshi and Commander of the Pacific Air Forces, General Robert Baisley, and his wife. A frail-looking Marcos needed some help deplaning, but once off, the 68-year-old president in exile was able to walk slowly by himself. There was a warm greeting between the Ariyoshis and the Marcoses, the welcome complete with leis. Later, Ariyoshi told reporters he found Marcos to be in good spirits, relaxed and hoping to get some rest here. He did not think Marcos was depressed or bitter.
I didn't get that from him. I didn't get the feeling that he felt bad about having to leave the country and being almost stripped from the presidency. I think that he feels that he was happy that things happened without any real bloodshed. He was concerned about Filipinos being turned against Filipinos and a lot of bloodshed, and he did not want to see that happen.
He said the Marcoses left in haste.
The son, for example, pointed out that he didn't have very much the clothing, and one of the daughters indicated to me that that was the only clean clothes that they had.
And they got obviously permission to come here, but it's a new place for them.
Jim McCoy was a local reporter assigned to the Marcos beat.
There was a number of people that supported them here, and there was a number of people that opposed them here. So it was a big story, you know, for weeks and months.
My beloved countrymen, I'm now in Hickam Air Force Base.
With that, Ferdinand Marcos, his wife Imelda at his side, read what he described as a letter to the Filipino people. It contained Marcos's version of his downfall. He never conceded losing control of the country he ruled for 20 years.
This situation came to a point that although I had control of superior military power and several opportunities to employ this military power, the employment of such an overwhelming force, no matter how legitimate, would have resulted in the bloody carnage among innocent civilians.
We got the word at some point during the day that they're definitely staying on Hickam that night. So that's when I decided to make a call. I had a very good source in federal law enforcement who I presume was there, and he was there. And that's where I said, anything interesting happened? And he told me about the jewelry in the Pampers boxes. Now, I remember calling the newsroom and saying, do we have video of Pampers boxes coming off the plane?
It was reported today that Marcos and his group arrived in Honolulu carrying large amounts of cash, gold, and valuables, and that more items, including land titles and stocks, arrived today from the Philippines.
But we heard that President Reagan was not happy about, the Pampers and the jewelry in the Pampers boxes, because it was it was about, they're fleeing their home country, but they're bringing all the loot with them, that kind of thing. So that was part of it too.
The group that's been known for months as the Friends of Cory Aquino has changed its name to the Coalition of Concerned Filipino Americans in Hawaii. Some of their leaders gathered to hear Marcos's comments today. They didn't like what they heard. They called it a charade.
We had sort of hoped that he would have the wisdom to move on to another place where his presence would be less divisive.
Had questions been allowed, Marcos would surely have been asked about the personal belongings he brought to Hawaii. Some reports indicate Marcos may have with him as much as $4 million in various assets, which coalition members think he may use for political maneuvering.
So you can assume that he has the ability and the resources to bankroll a movement, that would probably undermine the Aquino government.
By the time they were exiled, the Marcoses were estimated to have amassed assets worth anywhere between $5 to $10 billion. They are now famous for holding the Guinness World Record for the greatest robbery of a government. Much of that fortune is still missing, and that's led to a decades-long legal battle for Honolulu attorney Sherry Broder, who's still trying to recover the money.
I told my husband, can't we sue him, for human rights abuses? And my husband was a law professor of international law, and this was really his field. And he said, yeah, we can. And so we decided that we would do a case if there was a plaintiff that was interested. So we actually had talked to Belinda Aquino about it.
Aquino informed government officials in Manila about the money and goods allegedly brought here by Marcos. She says the head of the Philippine Commission for Good Government immediately hired a Honolulu attorney to try to impound the goods. Belinda Aquino, in turn, was named presidential designate to represent the Commission on Good Government here in Hawaii.
To look into the hidden wealth or investments abroad made by former associates of Mr. Marcos, as well as Mr. Marcos himself in the United States, of which there is ample documentation.
People power becomes panic at the palace gate. A mad rush to get in and see what Ferdinand and Imelda Marcos left behind. Today was the day of the poor. Manila's slum dwellers summoned by President Corazon Aquino to see the extravagant lifestyle of the palace. Aquino has refused to live there.
It is really sad that the previous occupants neglected the needs of the Filipino people.
Filipinos who used to be kept blocks from the Marcos' private universe got a 20-minute kaleidoscope of unimaginable luxury.
Wow!
Including the former First Lady's 10-foot wide bed.
That's why a lot of people here in the Philippines are starving.
Fantastic.
Ray Reblora and his wife Sally often go to bed hungry, trying to live on their $17 a week income. Their first baby is due any day. Their palace, homemade out of scrap, is smaller than Imelda Marcos' bed. As far as Ray is concerned, the Marcoses belong in jail.
He can come back here in the Philippines to face what he do to the people of the Philippines.
Ray and Sally's wardrobe consists of a few extra shirts. They were stunned by Imelda's storeroom of 2,700 pairs of shoes and hundreds of designer gowns. The anger is compelling. So many people were trying to get in today that children were in danger of being crushed. The government said that from now on, passes will be issued to hold down the number of daily visitors to the bitter exhibit of Marcos memorabilia.